Today we will be interviewing Amy Floyd, who is an art teacher and coordinator at the Autism Academy of Phoenix. She is an amazing teacher and has a real talent in both her career and her own artistic work. Amy paints on a professional level and also sells her pieces here at the gallery. She has a great eye for color and movement. All proceeds from the sales of the Autism Academy pieces go back to the school for supplies so that the students can keep creating. Those students' ages range from 5 to 21 years old, and they're extremely talented. Our clients have been very gracious and supportive of the cause, and they love to come in and see what's new from the Autism Academy.
So how did you start working for the Autism Academy? When did you start working for them?
I started about 6 years ago. I was part-time. They just needed someone to fill in 1 day a week. So I was working at a different school, and on my days off, I drove to the Autism Academy and taught like 3 classes. And that's how I fell in love with it. So then they offered me the job next year.
But how did we get connected? Like Autism Academy and the gallery.
Yeah, somebody from our school saw your gallery and connected us, and we started slowly selling some artwork, and then it just kind of exploded, and I was able to sell more and more of the students' artwork. So it was a great relationship. It still is.
Yeah, I agree. So we bring in as much work as we possibly can, obviously, and we try to keep the pricing really affordable. So it's really obtainable for our clients to purchase, even if they're just looking for a quick little, creation or something. So tell us a little bit about how you come up with the projects and how the money from the proceeds goes towards kind of the production of those projects, or maybe the ideas that come from that, all that sort of stuff.
The ideas for the projects are usually just inspired by what their talents are, and I try to make it so that everyone can be involved in the projects. And so I'm always going for color and subject matter. When we sell the stuff, the students do donate their pieces because they want to help the art department. At first, it was a little hard to explain that to them, but once they saw like, oh, look, we have new brushes that aren't falling apart going down the sink, and we have, a whole clay department now, and I bought design 3D printers. So after I started like buying, nicer things, they were like, oh, okay. So then when we start giving all the artwork to go home, they're like, well, can I send this to the gallery? Can I send this to the gallery? So it's really helped their self-esteem, and it gives them like ownership in the art department too. So I always tell them, because before I would be like, your parents bought this, your parents bought this, but then it was turned into, you guys bought this. So it's been really amazing.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think what's so cool is that, we have clients from all over the world, really. And especially, we see a lot of tourism in this area, and, people from out of state come and they'll buy a small piece or a paper piece from the kids. And then that's stretching now all the way to like New York and, even overseas. So it's just really crazy to see such cool pieces of art at such an affordable cost, and then literally all the money goes back to the school and the program so that it can, stay flourishing, and kind of this cycle can continue, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and on top of it, you guys always give us extra resources. So we've gotten, the canvases and the papers and the frames and extra paint, and that's always super helpful. So we appreciate that too.
Why did you choose this profession?
It kind of chose me. I mean, I have my fine art degree in painting, but I wanted a job that would accommodate raising 2 children. So a friend of mine said she was an art teacher, and I said, well, I didn't go to school for that. And she's like, I didn't either. Come join me one day and follow me around. And I did, and completely fell in love with it. So I got hired on as the art teacher there. So I've been teaching art for 13 years. The first year or so is scrambling, trying to figure out what you're doing. But my sister's an English teacher, so she was on the phone with me all the time, talking about classroom management. And
that's great. Well, we appreciate teachers in here, and thank you for all that you do, because the work is incredible, and it really does brighten people's day when they come in and hear that, you know, these came from kids with students from autism.
I mean, you really can't help but smile when you see their artwork because it's pretty amazing. So
It really, yeah, I agree. I mean, and every time you bring in new stuff, we're always super excited, and
oh, good.
we always get great responses. So, you know, everyone really loves it. One thing I did want to talk about was the large-scale commission project that kind of came from one of our clients who noticed the work here at the gallery, and then commissioned you and the students in the school to create a bunch of commission pieces and have the pieces displayed in their office, which I think is incredibly cool.
Yeah, there was an art rep that was buying paintings for the Carlisle company in Scottsdale, and she came up with the idea of they wanted something a little more fun, I think, and relaxed for their lunchroom. And she was like, well, let's look at Art One because they have student artwork. And she saw some of the work that my kids have done. I don't remember what was up at the time, but they came up with the idea of having us specifically design like the race cars, I think was the first project. And then the next year we did airplanes, which were amazing. That was my favorite one. I mean, we had like a unicorn airplane and a B-52 bomber. I mean, we had the whole range.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
They were really cool pieces for sure.
They are, and I've only heard positive things. Like everybody loves to eat lunch in there because they just sit and talk about them. They take about 21 pieces, so it's pretty amazing.
The pieces are just so unique. They're so creative and just from such a different perspective. It's really, really interesting.
It is, and I think that their perspective is what I enjoy watching them do the most. Is each kid has their own ideas of what they're going to do. So I've learned a lot about letting go on art assignments. You know, throw it out there and then see what you get back, instead of like, oh, you didn't do this correctly. You know, they have their own way they're going to do things, and if you just let them run with it, you can see all the talent come through. It's really neat.
Yeah, I love that. What have you learned from the students? And I know that you mentioned obviously to just kind of let go and, you know, give them the opportunity to do what they want. Is there anything else that you've learned specifically from the students?
I've also learned, you know, how important it is to let them have the freedom to do what they want, just because there's a lot of insecurities when you're doing art in front of other people. And so, you know, my classroom, I think I have a sign that says only positive vibes in here, because if you're negative at all, everyone picks up on it and everyone suddenly stops and they stop creating and being themselves. So I've learned a lot about it's your voice and your story, and that's okay. And it does not have to look like anybody else's. So that's probably the biggest thing they've taught me.
That's great. That's the like great life lesson that I think anybody, you know, take.
And be heard in that, you know, respect. You can't just pigeonhole everyone into the same exact thing. So I've got students who have, you know, trouble even holding a pen, but it's amazing what they can do. Like, to some people it might just look a little messy, but to me, like, that's their story, and I think it's really beautiful.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you started creating and kind of your journey through that?
I mean, I grew up around art. My mom and my aunt were both painters, and they were always at the kitchen table painting something. My mom always made, we did like just bread dough ornaments and all that stuff growing up. So I had the great skill base of art, and I just assumed everyone did. And then when I got to school, my art teacher kept commenting on it, but I didn't think anything different because I was like, whatever, everyone else can do this too. It wasn't really until I started teaching that I saw the difference of kids who don't have art at home, and then they come to school and they have a hard time just cutting a circle or drawing or tracing something. So I always knew I liked it, and that's how I spent my free time. I went to college for social work or sociology, I wasn't sure. And I took an art class to kind of relieve the stress of social work. And that professor was like, why aren't you doing this for your degree? And honestly, this sounds really naive. I didn't know you could do it for a degree. Don't even ask me how. I was like, oh, you can actually get a degree in this? And she said yes. And so I was like, we'll see. And then it just kept snowballing. You know, every semester it was more art, less social work classes. So I let it go for a while I had my children and they were young. And then I realized that I really could not function without making something all the time. So I started it back up. And the process I use right now is I don't do a poured painting. I don't want to call it that because I like to control where all the paint goes. So I use like a high, why can't I think of it? Acrylic fluid paint, that's what it's called. And I pour that out really thin first, and then I keep layering that. And recently I learned that I really like to do oil paint over it to give it a little more depth. But the thing I like to show is I think I'm an escapist, I realized. And so I always want the viewer to escape into my painting for a little bit to get away from reality. So one of my favorite photographers, his name is William Garnett, and he took photos, black and whites, from his airplane all over the earth. And I've been really obsessed with maps and topography maps and aerial maps and all that. So I think once I started going, it reminded me of that. Yeah. And then I started adding like migration trails and stuff.
I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Well, thank you for all you've done for our school. It's amazing, absolutely amazing, and all you've done for me. This is one of my favorite relationships.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, and thank you.